Hanzo is one of the most useful team players in Overwatch. His recon ability grants his team extra advantage by identifying threats, his ultimates can be used to delay entire enemy teams, and his fluid movement makes him an asset in both attack and defense. Here is a video on some of the best tips for playing as Hanzo. Tip 1. Movement and positioning. When playing as Hanzo, you want to keep a moderate distance away from the main fights and use cover to your advantage while you prepare your next shot. The key is constant movement. If you are currently under fire, keep peeking in and out of cover, get your shot off and then reload. If not, then it's best to stay near cover in case needed, but you can stay in sight to get a better view of the battlefield. Make sure you keep moving though. By standing still you make yourself vulnerable to all other characters, but in particular Widowmakers and other Hanzos. Hanzo is perfect for mid-range to long-range combat. Fully charged arrows will deal 125 damage and will 2-hit most characters. At close range he suffers from his slow fire rate, and at long range the speed of his arrows make it more difficult to hit moving targets. It's also harder to get a full use of his scatter ability at long range. You definitely don't want to draw attention to yourself as Hanzo. He doesn't have much health and it is much easier to hit targets when they aren't aware of your position. Using his wall climb ability, you should try and get above the enemy or to obscure positions on the flanks that you aren't expected to be. Getting the drop on someone with a fully charged arrow often allows you to get the second shot off without them having enough time to react and counter you. Tip 2. Vulnerabilities and their counters. Hanzo is incredibly weak to close range combat, because of which you should always watch out for Tracer and Genji, who are the best at breaking through your team's ranks to attack you. Another huge vulnerability is Pharah. Pharah is one of the few characters who can gain a height advantage over Hanzo, and because she flies through the air it is very difficult to hit her with your arrows. Fortunately, there is a counter to those pesky Tracers and Genjis. Hanzo's scatter ability is a great asset for dealing with weaker enemies at close range. By firing a scatter arrow just in front of an attacking player, the arrows will all ricochet into them, dealing a quick burst of a huge damage, while not having to be the most accurate of shots. Alternatively, if you see them coming for you, try and stick them with a recon arrow to keep track of their movements. Using the scatter technique works a treat against all enemies and is a great way to play Hanzo if you don't necessarily have the best aim as a player. Pharah is more difficult to counter as you cannot use the scatter ability to its full effect. My advice would be to avoid confrontation with her until she lands. One thing Hanzo does have over Pharah is the ability to shut down her ultimate with relative ease. When you hear her shout, you know she will be unable to move, allowing you to quickly fire an arrow at her to take her out. The same can be true of McCree's ultimate, depending on whether you can be quick enough. Tip 3. Ultimates. Hanzo's ultimate is one of the most useful in the game. Not only does the shout scare the entire enemy team, but it can be used to deal huge amounts of area damage, delay enemy movement, and move stubborn bastion units. If you're playing a map with a choke point, a great play is to fire the ultimate at the choke point. This delays the enemy team a few seconds to allow your team to collect themselves and regroup. Another way to use an ultimate is to fire it at a stationary bastion turret. The best case scenario results in a kill if the bastion can't move, but worst case you force him out of turret mode and make him more vulnerable or allow your team to press. The area effect of the ult allows for huge objective damage. Firing it at an objective, whether it is a checkpoint or a payload, although payload tends to result in more damage, will usually result in at least one kill. The best way to fire the ult is through a wall. This gives less time for the enemy to react to it and move out the way as they have no idea where it is coming from. Hanzo is my current favourite player of the game, and he is my most played by far. Hopefully this video will have helped you to understand his tactics a little better and given you some insight on different ways he can be played. If you have any tips of your own, please feel free to leave comments discussing them and helping out other players, and if you'd like to see tips for any other characters, feel free to let me know.